Greg Sertman is a workforce education strategist at Tooling U SME. Tooling U SME delivers learning and development solutions for the manufacturing community. Tooling U SME is also able to prepare the next generation workforce by providing industry-driven curriculum. In his role, Greg is responsible for bringing stakeholders together to create a pipeline of skilled workers in the advanced manufacturing sector. He is working to address the awareness gap to guide America's youth towards livable wages and meaningful careers. So thank you, Greg, for joining us, and without further ado, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, folks. I'm really excited about spending the next hour with you to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is building our workforce pipeline. I also want to mention that I sit on a couple school boards also here at Polaris Career Center and Olmsted Falls City School. So I wear a few different hats, and you may hear me talk about this issue from a few different perspectives, and that's intentional. So before we get started here, I want to ground you in some information, and I'm going to be referring to some data that is part of a report that Tooling U SME recently released in its Industry Pulse report. And I'm going to ask the folks at Manufacturing Works at the end of this webinar to share not only a copy of this presentation with you, but a copy of the Tooling U SME Industry Pulse report that was released a few months ago. So that was a survey that was done across the country to really get our arms around a lot of the issues and solutions around the manufacturing sector. Please scroll forward there. So some of that, I'm going to ground you in a little bit of information here. One is around our global manufacturing competitive index. So the study really showed is if we're trying to really evaluate a country's competitiveness, specifically in the manufacturing sector, these are the top three issues that organizations look at. Number one is the access to talented workers, which we're going to talk a lot about today. Number two is the country's trade, financial, and tax system. And then number three is the cost of labor and materials. So what we have found is that we were asking a lot of manufacturers what their top their business challenges were over the next 3 years. And we're talking hundreds and thousands of manufacturers across the country. 99% of them said that finding skilled new hires was their top challenge. And then number two on the list was just upskilling their incumbent workforce based on the changes that are happening in their sector. And number three was onboarding new employees with 84%. So some of the other blueprints for talent development in general, 3/4 of the manufacturers said their company doesn't have the talent development strategy for manufacturing employees. Only 2 out of 5 acknowledge that their company even trains people to develop the right knowledge, skills, and abilities. 38% agree that their company provides employees with training that meets the organization needs for today, and a little bit less than that say their company provides employees with training that meets the organization needs for the future. So here's the good news, is that a lot of this stuff is within our control as manufacturers. To be able to hire, develop, and retain our employees. But what we're finding is that 50% or less are really doing the kind of things in order to make this happen. So only 1 in 3, 33% are budgeting for employee development. Only a third are designing staff to actually manage the employee development and training function. Only 1 in 3 are operating structured training programs, and only about half of organizations evaluate the critical job tasks, and then aligning that with structured evaluations. So now we're coming down to the big issue here, and the big issue is the fact that manufacturers can't find enough skilled workers to grow their organization and even keep up with the demand that's happening today. And, so it's really frustrating as we work with manufacturers all over the country, and some of us tell us that, they have to turn down projects and work just because they don't have the kind of capacity to keep up with demand, which is kind of frustrating because it's kind of stunting their growth as an organization and then stunting the local and the national economy. So one of the things that we need to do to really address this is this is one of our workforce brochures at Tooling USME, is that our position is that not one of these stakeholder groups alone can fix this problem. It really takes the collaboration of all these different stakeholders that I have represented here to work together to really fill that manufacturing pipeline. I'm going to spend the most of the webinar today talking about two of these five, including the education sector and the manufacturing sector, but I don't want to discount the work and the importance of some of these other stakeholders, like economic and workforce development agencies. Here locally in the Cleveland area, that would be organizations like Manufacturing Works, who's sponsoring this webinar today, Magnet, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, other units within the Cuyahoga County and City of Cleveland government system, the Cleveland Job Corps, and then also looking at some community-based organizations like Towards Employment, Goodwill Industries, some faith-based groups, veterans groups, departments of rehab, the Department of Corrections, and we're even seeing some staffing companies getting more involved across the country. Since there's a huge need for manufacturing employees at the frontline level, they're doing everything they can to provide folks with minimal skills, just enough to get them hired. And business is pretty good in that area for them right now. So moving forward from this webinar, I'm going to really target in on the education and manufacturing sectors. Okay, so we've all heard this term called the skills gap. I hear it probably 3-4 times a week. It's well documented. I'm not going to go into detail about the stats on this. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling this right now, but I want to propose that what we really have is an awareness gap issue. If we can fix this awareness gap issue, I think the issue around the skills gap will kind of fall into play here. So let's explore this awareness gap issue a little bit more. So I want to define the awareness gap issue as the chasm between what people think they know about a particular industry or career and what the actual reality is. We didn't just get here overnight, so it's important to talk about how did we get here? What are the causes of the awareness gap? So 3 main things here. One is the stigmas from the past. If you're 45 or older right now and you have kids who are considered part of the Z generation, then you probably have the same stigma as I have, especially the folks over 45 who don't work in the manufacturing sector. You have these perceptions around, low technology, dirty factory floors, and, that's influencing what we tell our kids. We also, over a couple of decades, have gutted our technical skills programs across the country. I think we've made some headway in the past 10 years on this, but, it's been slow progress. I think we're moving in the right direction on that. And then this third notion around pushing everyone to go to college. I think we've almost brainwashed an entire generation that they have to go to college in order to be successful, as if getting accepted into a college is kind of like the end all game, and that's actually far from the truth. So I want to talk a little bit about high school kids and career paths. So what we're basically doing today is we're asking high school seniors to make these $100,000 or so debt decisions. without really thinking a lot of things through. I think in order to make this decision and be well informed, there's at least 3 components that we have to think through. Have I identified a career pathway that interests me? Did I have an opportunity to explore that career pathway? And then what's the demand outlook for this career pathway? Let's have conversations about this with our kids before we make this $100,000 debt decision. I'm just kind of rounding out the $100,000. The state schools here in the state of Ohio range between about 21 grand on the low end, and it gets pretty high on the high end. But just rounding out those costs with other auxiliary costs, we're looking at about 100 grand without factoring scholarships. So the myth here is that getting admitted to a college is success. And the reality is that the dropout rate in college is pretty high, and many who achieve degrees can't find work in their field. So only 60% of college students graduate within 6 years of enrollment. That's a pretty staggering number. I asked, what's happening to the other 40%? So once we have an opportunity to identify a career pathway and then explore that, I think all options should be considered, including college. But other options like industrial or industry-specific credentials, pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, the military, or a combination of all those activities. The point here is that college may not be the right option for everyone. So I want to point out a handful of college degrees that they're good degrees, but what happens is in the marketplace, the supply outweighs the demand for the skill set. So, I did a little research here in the state of Ohio, and I came up with a lot of these different degree programs that colleges are offering here in the state of Ohio. And for those of you who are on the phone only, I'd like to take a minute and read some of these off. Commercial art and graphic design, communications, English, exercise science and physical fitness, fashion design, history, liberal arts, music, philosophy, sociology, and sports management. Now, I'm not here to criticize any of these degrees. What I'm here to tell you that our production of supply of graduates in these areas is outweighing the demand. So what's the impact on the graduate? They're walking out of 4 or 5 years with tremendous college debt. They can't find work in their field of study. They end up accepting entry-level work while trying to pay off college debt. At the same time, probably going to live back with their parents. And now they're back kind of where they started. They have to figure out how to gain marketable skills that line up with some of their interests. So here we've kind of done these folks a disservice by, really coaching them through climbing this ladder of success of college, if you will. And then after 4 to 6 years and $100,000 in debt, we come to find out that this ladder of success is leaning up against the wrong building. And, our kids deserve a lot better. So now let's get into some exciting things. What entry-level positions in manufacturing are in high demand? Now, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to you. We pulled this data both nationally, and it kind of lines up here with the state of Ohio too. Your CNC machinists, both on the operator and programmer side, your maintenance technicians, production technicians, your welders, solders, and brazers. These jobs, if you get industry-specific credentials in these areas, you're not going to have a hard time finding a job. I was just with a team of folks from Tooling U SME out in the Los Angeles area a couple months ago, and we were working with a couple community colleges in Northrop Grumman. They're looking for around 700 composites technicians. It turns out that we've, through technology, have found a different material to make airplanes with. That's lighter and stronger. But in order to do that successfully, we need hundreds of composite technicians to be able to fill those roles. So that's the big challenge out there. And different parts of the country have slightly different needs. But in general, I mean, I could have created a list here in Ohio about 20 long for roles, entry-level roles in manufacturing. These are the ones that kind of rose to the top. I also want to introduce this 127 rule. And really what this is that for every one master's degree level employee, 2 bachelor's degree level employees, and 7 associate, certificate, or apprentice level employees are needed. So here's the good news. You know, if you can latch on to a manufacturer in an entry-level position, many of these manufacturers provide opportunities for advancement and then ongoing training and development, up to and including paying for college degrees. So I think that's really great. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the folks that we're working with. So the Generation Z folks, which is really most of the folks who are in college right now and younger. So these are folks born after 1995 that currently represent about 26% of the population, and by a couple years they're going to represent about 33% of the population. And I think the Z generation kind of gets a bad rap. Some of the stereotypes around these folks are that they're lazy, they're entitled, they're gamers, they're addicted to their phones and social media. This is the selfie generation. They have acronyms for everything. Everything's about me, and also known as the Y generation. And I want to get to that here in a minute, but I also want to point out the fact that we raise them at the end of the day. So, a lot of these things should not come to our surprise. But what I've found, and I've talked to some folks both nationally and here locally, if we can answer their why, if we can really connect with this generation and answer their why. Next slide, please. They can figure out the how. I mean, this is the most resourceful generation I think that we've ever seen. In the age of Google, these kids can find things out without, on their own, without help. And, what we need to do is really foster that. I want to tell a quick story about one of my sons, Jack, who's 17 years old. He is a junior in high school. And when he was little, we try to get him involved in a lot of different things. And I suspect a lot of you who have kids in grade school or high school have tried to do the same things. We as parents introduce them to sports. For Jack, it was basketball, lacrosse, taekwondo, baseball, swimming, and track. Introduce them to music, the trombone, the tuba, the piano, the guitar, the harmonica, and other activities like ping pong and chess. So, it's probably, I could create a list of 20 to 30 things that we've introduced our kids to. And ultimately today, Jack enjoys playing ping pong, the piano, swimming, running, and a few other things. So, 3 to 5 things that he is fairly passionate about, but it took about 25 or 30 things for me to introduce him to be able to get to those 3 or 5 things. The point is that we spend a lot of effort and time trying to introduce different things for them to land on a few that they enjoy. But when it comes down to exploring careers, I'm wondering if we're doing the same things. So it's our responsibility as educators and parents to introduce them to a lot of different things to see what really resonates with them. So when he was in 8th grade, so we're talking about, 14 years old, as we're trying to explore different careers for him, one of the areas I know he was slightly interested in was aviation. So we took him out to the Lorain County Junior Pilots Day. It was a Saturday morning and afternoon where kids could show up and basically in a 2 or 4-seater go up with a pilot and kind of see what it's like. And, my wife and I were kind of nervous about it, to be honest with you. Here we are sending up our 14-year-old with a licensed pilot, but a stranger. And he was gone for 15 minutes, and then he was gone for another 15 minutes. So my wife and I were back at the airport kind of wondering what was happening, that he was either going to come back scared to death or really enjoy that experience. Well, let me tell you, he got off that plane, and the look in his eyes is something that I've never seen before. And it was at that moment that he figured out his why. And everything around that now was leading up to supporting that why for him, which was, becoming an aviation pilot. And things changed from that moment on where, we didn't have to wake him up for school anymore. And he did really well, a lot better in school. He's on the National Honor Society now. But my point in telling the story is that if we can help our kids figure out what their why is, they will figure out the how, and they will connect all these how-to activities to their why. So I encourage all of you to try different things. The Exploring program that I have up here on this slide is a fantastic program that's being integrated into a lot of schools right now to introduce kids into different careers, not only manufacturing, but other areas like healthcare, engineering, IT, and other areas. So if you have a moment, you may want to look that up. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit now about the partnership between the manufacturers and the educators. And manufacturers, by the way, have been doing a really nice job over the last 10 years, really supporting education in a better way. Yeah, can we do better? Certainly, but 75% of manufacturers right now offer some type of internships for students in manufacturing. Almost 70% support community college programs. 64% are providing some type of financial support to the manufacturing workforce pipeline, and then almost 60% are supporting K through 12 programs. And you also use their local workforce boards for pipeline development. So I want to talk a little bit about, and this, I'm going to put my educator hat on now. What can educators do specifically to really support this workforce pipeline? And I'm going to talk about a few initiatives that we're doing here at either Olmsted Falls City Schools or Polaris Career Center, and we can always do better. Number one is be proactive about engaging parents and employers. So, look no further than the parents of our students. These folks are all in all sorts of different careers, and we need to be proactive about taking an inventory of what careers our parents are involved with and be able to capture that data in a database. So what careers are they in, and then more importantly, are they willing to come in and for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, speak about their specific profession and bring those experiences into our classrooms? We also want to promote visits to manufacturers for not only the students, but also our teachers and parents to really help change that perception that they might have about manufacturing today. We want them, the teachers and the parents specifically, to see these new, clean, higher tech manufacturing environments. So we're a big fan of loading up the bus, if you will, with even a dozen students and heading out to a manufacturing plant for an hour or so to see really what's happening out there. Also promoting this, what I like to call earn while you learn model for internship programs for our high school seniors. If you take all your classes like you're supposed to, we're finding that by the time you're in your senior year, you really only need a half a year worth of curriculum to graduate. So, there's lots of things you can do with that other half of the year. We're seeing a lot more kids leaving, or I should say just seniors leaving at noon every day and then reporting out to an organization, and getting paid maybe minimum wage, but in a role that lines up with the manufacturing hiring needs in different areas. So for manufacturers to be open to that model is very important too. But we as educators need to promote that model of earn while you learn. We also need to really listen to manufacturers about the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they're looking for, not only on the technical training side, but some of these soft skills and intangible skills that I know are important. The problem solving, the analytical thinking, the ability to be able to work successfully in a team environment, the ability to connect with people that may not have the same behavior style as you. We need to work on these type of skills, frankly, starting in elementary school. We also need to build some type of a career interest inventory assessment for students. At Olmsted Falls Middle School, we happen to use a tool called Naviance, which is a great tool. It's really, it gets your arms around where the kids' interests and areas of passion are as it relates to specific careers. So we kind of use that as our blueprint. We require our 7th graders to take it, and now our counselors have kind of a roadmap. Because not only does it identify the careers that they are best suited for, and it's not just one career, it could be 3 or 4 or 5 of them. There are also careers that are listed that they're least suited for. So our job now is, since we know this information, now we have to provide our kids with opportunities for them to put their toe in the water on some of those higher ranking career choices. Also to provide career counseling services for students. Your traditional counselors in middle schools and high schools weren't necessarily trained to provide the career counseling piece. I know at our high school, we have proactively hired a counselor from Cuyahoga Community College and another one from Auburn Career Center who have more of that career focus and career skill set. And last but not least, and I would say most importantly, we as educators can't let test scores define student success. Oftentimes it's your C and sometimes even D students who have the most amount of creativity out there, and we're just not we're not tapping into that. But to define them by their test scores is really doing the kids a disservice. So we need to be able to define student success in other ways. So as manufacturers, there's also some things that we can do. And these, I know there's a lot of manufacturing leaders on the phone, whether you're an owner, plant manager, you're an HR, or recruiting. These are some of the things I'd like you guys to consider if you're not already involved in any of this. Visit your school. Trust me, they're happy to take your calls. Arrange visits for you to go in there and talk to them about your business and what you guys do. Be open to accept visits from students and their parents to promote career exploration. Be open to providing work-based learning experiences or internships in areas that where you have high demand. Offer apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. Here's the one I want to talk a little bit about more, is become involved with K through 12 business advisory councils, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what they are. So over the past couple years, Governor Kasich has been trying to figure out how to get business and industry more involved in public education. He's tried these 2 initiatives that has frankly failed over the last 2 years. They couldn't get past the House or the Senate. But what he wanted to do was to have every single school board in the state of Ohio appoint 2 business people to their board of education. They would be appointed by the school board, and they would not have a voting voice, but they would have influence. That did not go over well with the educators. They also tried to have Ohio teachers shadow business folks a lot of times over the summer as a requirement to renew their teacher license. And that didn't go over very well either. What did go over and did pass was the formation of these business advisory councils. So now every single school system in Ohio is supposed to be putting one of these together right now. And the purpose of this council is simply to advise local school districts on changes in the economy and job market. It's to advocate for the employment skills that are most critical to their business and the development of curriculum to be able to teach these skills. And it's to really aid and support the school systems by offering some suggestions for developing a working relationship among businesses, labor unions, and educators. So what we try to do here, instead of trying to do this on our own within individual school systems, 5 of our school systems, and that would be Olmsted Falls, North Olmsted, Berea, Fairview Park, and Strongsville, the 5 of us got together and said, why don't we do this together? Because within each of our geographical districts alone, we may not have had every single industry sector represented, so there's strengths in numbers there. So we did this under the umbrella of the Polaris Career Center. So we formed the Southwest Business Advisory Council. And if your business happens to be within the confines of these 5 school systems, we'd love to hear from you. In fact, you can call me directly. I'm part of this Business Advisory Council, and we'd love to have you and add you to the council. We've had a couple meetings already. Our last one as recently as last week, and we're having some really nice conversations about how we can work better together to provide exploration experiences for our kids. Next slide. These are just a few tips on building a strong workforce for the manufacturers internally. Identify your business objectives. Make sure that you're defining performance-based competency models, aligning those learning solutions to the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are critical to your business. Structure your OJT program, and then develop and execute a measurable impact study so that you know the system that you're putting in place is getting you the results that you're hoping to accomplish. For educators, it's pretty simple. Keep it simple, be collaborative, and be creative. So, we talked a little bit about, hiring folks, and, that's one issue, but another one is how do we keep them and develop them after we've hired them? Here are some of the top categories or reasons why people leave jobs. And number one there is career development, especially with the Z generation and millennials. When they start day one, they walk in and, they kind of want your job, but they don't, they know they have to work for it. They just need to see that pathway of career training and advancement. And we as employers need to just show them what that looks like. I think they'll work hard at it, but they just need to see that it's a possibility within your organization. Work-life balance is important to them. Managing behavior, no one wants to work for a jerk, and their overall well-being. So as manufacturers, we want to build strong trainers and mentors internally so that when we bring on these new employees, we have folks on staff who are able to take them under their wing, kind of help them be successful in the job, not only doing the job from a technical perspective, but understand the organization from a cultural perspective, and just be that foundation for them on becoming successful. We want to be able to communicate with them early and often. So being able to acknowledge any progress that they make and their accomplishments. And then, especially with these millennials and Z generation folks, they like to see and feel that what they do each and every day is connected to this bigger picture. So, as leaders in the manufacturing space, we need to be able to paint this picture for them and know that and stress the importance of what they do and how it ties into the bigger picture. We also want to build these clear training plans and career pathways. Again, it just supports this bigger vision around how they can get from step A to step Z. All right, this is one of my, and I know this may be hard to see, it's not very clear, but this is one of my favorite slides because it lays out the different on-ramps. So it's really not where folks are coming from. They could be coming from the high schools, but they could also be coming from a college or a university or being out of work, coming back off of a military assignment, or frankly even out of incarceration. Is that we have these different on-ramps for folks, and that we're using the right type of learning approaches, whether it's a degree in college or an apprenticeship or an industry credential or other internship-based programs that ultimately leads them to full-time work in an area that they have some level of passion about. So building career awareness and promoting career exploration, especially at the younger ages, are absolutely critical to being able to address this thing that we're calling the skills gap in manufacturing. We're talking about a whole generation of folks here, and if we can really spend more time and effort on this awareness and exploration piece with all the stakeholders that I had on a previous slide, really supporting, I think we can make some really big headway into addressing this skills gap. This is a profession that does it the best as far as career awareness goes. Who all can remember the times where you either visited the firehouse or they came to you? So firefighters are the profession that know it best. As I travel the country, I cannot find a market in the United States where firefighters are hard to find. We get enough of our kids interested in this career path, and the supply is out there. But they do a great job of, and I know as manufacturers, we may not have the sexy fire trucks and the hats and the equipment and those sort of things, but think about the things that you're able to do to provide a similar experience, whether, you're going out to the schools or you're having students and parents and teachers come to your facility, and what kind of experience that we can provide for them to become interested in this industry sector and specific careers, and ultimately put their toe in the water and go ankle deep and knee deep on some of these career paths. I also wanted to share with you my career coaching model that I use, and I encourage everyone else to use when I'm having conversations with either kids or folks who are just displaced and out of work. Let's find something that we love to do. Let's figure out a way to build knowledge, skills, and abilities around that so that we can get good at it. And let's make sure that that career path is something that is needed and marketable out there in the world. So there's a way that we can get paid for it. So if we find what we love and we build some competency around it and it's needed in the world, those are the three things that we really need to think through to find everyone's sweet spot. Because, if you take any one of those three areas out of the equation, it becomes something very different. And until we find that sweet spot, we're not going to find true happiness, in our lives where, we have passion around something, we can build some competency around it, and we can go out there and utilize our skills in a meaningful way where we can get paid for it. So it's a nice model that I like to use when I talk to kids and folks who are looking for work. With that, I'm at my time right now, and we intentionally have left open about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So I'm going to kind of turn it back to the folks at Manufacturing Works and to facilitate a question and answer period.
Okay, we do have one question. It says that it's clear that there are challenges bringing individuals into the manufacturing workforce. I suspect there is even a greater challenge having qualified formal educators, community colleges, certificate programs, especially the wage gap, any leading or innovative solutions. I guess the question is, I think, how do we get formal educators in the higher levels on board with manufacturing?
Yeah, and I know one of the big challenges is not only at community colleges but career tech centers is to find those instructors that are not only good at what they do from a technical perspective, but are just great teachers. As far as wages go, I can tell you that nationally, an entry-level machinist makes somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 starting out. But more importantly, they're now in an environment where they can grow, where they can learn new skills within that organization, and become promoted. So I don't know if I answered your question there, or if any of the folks at Manufacturing Works have anything to add to that.
Brianna, Linda, can you add anything to, any thoughts to that?
Can you hear me? This is Linda.
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, what we're seeing right now to kind of help stem that gap and cover that issue is we're seeing a greater push for the registered apprenticeship model to give employers the idea of the basic skill sets that are needed so that they can incorporate that in and start to have that consistency and to have that career path that the younger workers want. And actually, the older workers want it too. Some of them would like to be skilled up. And so we're seeing a push coming from the federal government and from the state to start really looking at that apprenticeship, looking at pre-apprenticeship, and to build start to build your own funnel of people and develop, like Greg said, that relationship with your local school districts or your local career centers or even your local community colleges to help bring people in, look at your environment, see what your environment is like.
And I will add that there's the new what they call the IRAP model, which is the industry recognized apprenticeship program, allows a little bit more flexibility around these apprenticeship programs. Back in the old days, there were 4 years, if you want to be a carpenter or plumber or electrician, and it was a pretty regimented long-term process. So, apprenticeships don't have to be 4 years anymore. They could be 18 months, and they could apply to a lot of different job roles, both within manufacturing and in other industry sectors.
Thanks, Greg. I also noticed that we have our youth team from Manufacturing Works is also on the seminar, and I'm not sure if they have the ability to talk, but if they have anything to add, I know they have the ability to talk, whether they have the microphone on. We'd be happy to hear from them as well.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right. This is Jessica Westrop. I'm the workforce manager for Manufacturing Works, and my colleague Mike McMillan and I spend most of our time here at Max Hayes High School. And one of the things that Greg mentioned as far as internships, that is one of the services that we provide for local manufacturers through the manufacturing programs here at Max Hayes. But we also have relationships with the area CTE schools as well. And I'm happy to connect anybody on the line with the contacts at these schools as well. But Magnet has a program, we have a program, and then all the area CTE schools as well. So if anybody wants to be linked, maybe Mary Ellen, you can send out my contact information at the end of the recording.
Sure, we can add you to the follow-up.
And Mary Ellen, this is Linda. And thanks, Jessica. Thank you for reminding me that my specific role is to encourage and to help people implement apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships in their environment. So if you are interested in having a discussion, starting a discussion on that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if Mary Ellen, you could add me at the very end with Jessica's contact information, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, that's an Ann thing. So the
yes.
Other Mary Ellen. So
the other Mary Ellen. Oh, yay!
All right. Any other questions?